Well, hello, good morning, and thank you all for attending our open mic session on CBSA's Assessment and Revenue Management, CARM. I'm Maria, the Marketing Manager at GHY International, and I will be moderating the webinar today. We encourage you to submit your questions throughout this session when they come to mind. You can do this by hitting the Q&A icon in the navigation bar at the top of your Teams meeting screen. Type in your question in the box that appears on the right-hand side and send it on through. We will address these questions when we move into our open mic Q&A session at the end of a brief presentation. After the session concludes, we will also be sending links to access the recording of this session and the slide deck and some contact information. So with CARM's new transition plan announced, the question is, what's next? And what can you do as an importer now to be fully prepared? We know you have a lot of questions about CARM, and we're excited to dedicate an extensive period of time today to answer as many as we can. So our speakers today are Al Dewar, our Executive Vice President, and Sarah Maricotte, our CARM and Special Projects Manager. Without further delay, we will now move into the presentation.
Thanks, Maria. And it's important to recognize the purpose of this open mic was we expected CARM, CBSA, they were going to be turning off accounting 2 days from now on April 26th, as they and we were going to be transitioning to this new environment. We also conveniently picked this time as it was to follow a trade chain partner working group conference call. So we would have had the latest and greatest intel as this CARM was supposed to launch. Well, this past Friday, CBSA postponed the launch, and yesterday, CBSA said, no update call today, but more would be announced in the weeks ahead. Well, GHY, we were as ready as we could be, and we're disappointed CARM didn't launch. We anticipated there was going to be a bit of a rocky ride in some spots, but we were as ready as we possibly could be based on the rules of the game. And we're going to talk a little bit about what those rules of the games were and are as CBSA laid that out. And we didn't want to cancel an opportunity to connect with people in an open mic format. And so particularly canceling at the last minute. So here we are. We recognize CARM is a flawed program as designed, but we also recognize CBSA, they created sufficient workarounds that trade would flow and border fluidity, it would exist through the workarounds. So Maria, if you could go to the next slide. The next slide talks about the guiding principles of CARM. And we've taken the slide from CBSA, but we've it looked more GHY-like. The guiding principles being all importers have to be registered and having delegated any broker that would be releasing shipments on their behalf. You know, it hardly seems realistic that any and all businesses that would be importing would be able to register and delegate to enable a broker who had released the shipment on their behalf, or a courier had released the shipment on their behalf. And so there has been a large uptick. For the longest time, there was less than 10% and even 20% of the 200,000 importers in Canada that were registered and delegated. But much like when we file our taxes, we kind of wait till the last minute. Within the last few weeks, there's been a large uptick. So now at least 1 in 3 importers are registered. But if your business isn't registered, it's important to recognize you don't exist. And when CARM finally does launch, you'll be unable to have things account on your behalf. So what CBSA did here is they created workaround, I call it workaround number 1, assisting importers, brokers, and themselves by saying that a broker could account using the broker's business number when CARM launched for a particular period of time, a transitional period, to ensure that shipments would continue to move across the border, fluidity would exist, and allow the payment to be recorded against the broker profile versus an importer profile. Well, what this means is that let's say Sarah was an importer and I was her broker, like Sarah being a business and I'm her broker, but she hadn't yet registered on the portal. I could release something and customs clear it for Sarah, She'd get her package, but I'd be unable to account for her unless I used my business number. Now, I don't understand why I would do that, put something on my business number or the equivalent of my credit card to account for Sarah. She's not my wife. She's not my family. She's just a client. Well, but clients are important. We only have a commercial relationship. But CBSA felt, or they believe most brokers would assist importers in this time of transition. And quite frankly, GHY, and I'm sure many other brokers were ready for it. Maria, next slide. The next two slides talk about what the transition plan was. CBSA put their transition plan in writing, and they said to customs brokers, if you did happen to account for an importer like Sarah, we wouldn't hold you accountable in an event that there was any regulatory infraction. I'm not sure what Sarah's importing, but if there's any regulatory infraction, there's going to be a transition and a grace. And I kind of compare that to if I was in an airport where a security officer asked me to carry a luggage of potentially a handicapped passenger through security, I'd probably do it. But most of us would probably wonder why the security officer isn't doing it themselves. However, most of us probably wouldn't do that if we recognized, or many brokers might not do that if they recognized there were 100,000 importers who hadn't yet registered on the portal. So why would you put that on your account? Why would you carry that through? And in fact, one of Canada's largest couriers, being UPS, when they were asked where they were at with registration and delegation of business, when they testified at a House of Commons Trade Committee meeting less than a month ago, they said 10% of importers they supported were registered and delegated. So that means like 9 out of 10 times UPS would need to represent their business number instead of an importer's business number. And we have to believe that that would impact Canada's trade statistics. And a lot like workaround number one, workaround number two seemed a bit flawed, although the border would still remain to be fluid. Next slide, Maria. And this just talks about the other type of stream, because there's two types of streams of activity that generally occur with Canada's import. So if you go to the following slide, this is what the portal looks like. And there's a benefit to being on the portal, and everybody should be on the portal. You should have seen this screen. And if you've seen this screen, you benefit from what I'll call workaround number 3. And I'm going to call it the gift of security. For anyone that's registered, simply by signing up, CBSA is going to provide you 6 months of free security once CARM finally launches. So next screen, Maria. So what that really means is currently what's happening for the vast majority of imports into Canada is a customs broker has a bond or a release prior to payment security posted on your behalf. And that covers, I'm going to say, about 95% of Canada's imports. And that relates as well to whether you're using FedEx, UPS, or DHL. They have the same type thing that allows a release at time of crossing, and then accounting within, let's say, a month. And that's about what it is. So in today's world, brokers are using the importer's business number, but their security is providing support for month-end payment. As you can see on this slide, we've shown the launch change date. And with each change of launch date, moving from May to October, and so on, that 180-day clock keeps getting pushed back. So importers have now until approximately May 2025 to obtain security to ensure that when CARM R2 does finally launch, which we're told should be October 2024, you would be able to have your shipments just flow through and then pay at the end of the month, instead of the alternative, having to pay cash wherever your shipment happens to arrive. Certainly not desirable if I've imported something, I happen to be living in Winnipeg. if I import something that happens to land in Vancouver, as much as I'd like to fly to Vancouver to get my product, or seems a little bit unrealistic to fly to Vancouver to issue payment. So next slide, Maria. And I think I missed the slide. Maybe go to the next one, please. There we go. We'll have to go back to that one in a minute. One thing CARM doesn't, or pardon me, one thing CARM does solve, though, even in its current design, is it gives each importer visibility to their account. Because a broker, whether that be GHY, whether it be UPS, whether it be FedEx, etc., they don't have visibility necessarily to your account. And as a result, there may be instances where debits or credits are outstanding. Maybe there's late accounting penalties. Maybe there's interest. And CBSA recognized there's gaps in what importers can see and not see. In fact, in certain cases, we have found hundreds of thousands of dollars that haven't been properly accounted for or registered in CARM. Maybe it's an old debt. Maybe it's something that when an importer was given a reprieve from accounting at time of COVID, maybe there was a staffing turnover. Everyone should be on the portal. You should see a screen like the portal, and everybody should take a moment to look at their statement of account. Look to see if it is in sync with what you think it should be. Some probably on this call are wondering if there's a gap in a payment or a large debit or a credit. Wouldn't somebody from CBSA call? And that's a very good question. I don't have the answer to that. The idea of CARM was supposed to be that by importers connecting on the portal, you would be able to have that visibility, and customs could reach you via the portal in that way and provide notifications. Unfortunately, the portal has been so delayed. It was supposed to have originally been launched in the final version 2022, and it started in 2021. But here we are. The speed that CBSA is rolling it out leaves a lot to be desired. The people that maybe got on the portal to begin with, your employees, maybe they were the ones that originally set your business up. You should, and what the government recommends is that every business have a minimum of 2 business account managers. We just recommend each business take a moment, have a look at their statement of account. Does it look right for you? Maybe something has been posted to a wrong account. Maybe something hasn't been paid. Maybe a refund exists. And if you can't see your portal, if you can't get on, please contact Sarah and her team after the fact, and she'll give you a number or to outreach so that you can work directly with the CBSA. No broker can assist you in getting on if you're already on. You have to work through CBSA's help desk. There's a bit of a delay, but they'll get things straightened away.
I just wanted to make a quick point on that. So really what Al's talking about is that in sense of a lot of importers did do their due diligence. They registered back in 2021. They registered back in early 2022. But CBSA has revoked or deactivated many of these accounts. So if you haven't tried to sign up since then, you may be one of these people that have this account deactivated. And CBSA is the only one that can support in getting you reactivated and into that portal, which is very important.
Perfect, thanks. Now, Maria, if I could have you go back a slide, because thank you. So one of the biggest changes that was going to be taking place and will take place when CARM does launch is there's going to be a new declaration that where a CAD, a customs accounting declaration, is going to be taking the place of the current B3. Well, the current B3 looks like this. And if you had 5 different tariff classifications on a shipment, you would receive a document that looks like this in most cases when you got an invoice from whichever broker you happen to be using. What CBSA has done is they've created a new declaration that looks like this, the Customs Accounting Declaration called the CAD. And you'll be receiving those once CARM does launch, or you'll be looking to the portal potentially to see what your declaration looks like. one of the challenges of the new declaration is it doesn't even include the duty rate. So for people that want to look at something and see what duty they've paid, they certainly see a lot of information, but they don't receive some of the basics that existed on the previous form. So that's what some of you would have had to look forward to in a few weeks, but now in another 6 months. And if you could jump forward to 2 more slides, Maria. Oh, now another slide. One more. There we go. We'll have to go back to the other one in a minute. So what we recommend everybody do, and certainly credit to the Canadian Association of Importers and Exporters, also known as IE Canada, they've created a flow chart to assist importers in understanding that each of your readiness and each of your unique decisions as it relates to CARM from an importer's perspective, not from a broker's perspective, but an importer's perspective, because CARM is an importer program. And these flow charts walk you through decisions that range from how to register, who as a person should be registering, what type of financial security should you have or consider to have, who should be paying for your imports, whether that be the broker or yourself direct to CBSA, and why, as well as other monitoring considerations. And if I can have you go back again, Maria. But where we find ourselves right now, before we get into the Q&A, there's a pause on CARM. And there's been a lot of reasons to why CARM has been paused. However, the belief of most in the industry is that there was a readiness gap. And though those workarounds existed that we talked about earlier, a lot of them were untested. And as a result, there were 22 trade associations that united. They united and went to the House of Commons Trade Committee, and they said CARM needs to pause. You look there, you see 1% of the software providers could say that they were 100% ready in context with how CBSA had been working and supporting the transition. And let's face it, if less than 100 businesses were able to see and simulate and test in this new portal, and yet 200,000 importers exist, that probably does speak to a readiness gap. I can have you jump forward now, Maria. So this is a slide from CBSA. We've put it into our visual, but following their third stage of testing, they wound up their program with recommendations basically saying, you know what, we can do better. And as such, we expect many of these internal recommendations are going to form part of whether it be a future simulation or an outreach as CBSA prepares to launch for what they say will be October 2024. Next slide, Maria. And what we do at GHY here, we try to keep our website up to date so that you or anybody would have a reference point to see where things are at. This CARM, it's been elusive. It's been happening or evolving since 2010. It's a moving target. That's 14 years. So we welcome your feedback as to how or who to best connect with as we dialogue on CARM, and we open up the mic right now to take whatever questions that we can take and respond to, because that's what this is about. This was about that ability to have Q&A with what is known. If we don't know, we will get back to you and everybody else who's on this particular call with a response. And if there's a question that's asked on this particular session where we recognize a fellow trade chain partner who also participates in any of these working groups may have the answer, we'll open up the mic to them to answer, because this is about collaboration, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you, Al. Thank you, Sarah. Again, to reiterate, the floor is open on our open mic Q&A period. Again, to reiterate, you can submit your questions by hitting that Q&A icon at the top of your Teams meeting screen. Type in your question in the box that appears on the right-hand side and send it on through. So we've got one of our first questions here from Hope. will our customs broker still be able to pay our GST, duty, etc. on our behalf?
Absolutely. That can be worked out with your custom broker or brokers. What's important to recognize, though, if using just one broker, that should be fine, because it'll be on a one-to-one relationship. But if you're using more than one, for instance, maybe use a freight forwarder to do the odd clearance of a delivered duty paid shipment or a courier, any payment that's issued goes against your oldest debt. So UPS or FedEx may have done a clearance, but maybe GHY does a lion's share of your work. Any payment that GHY would apply would go against your oldest debt. So if there happened to be a transaction that hadn't yet been paid by UPS or FedEx, the amount paid would go against that. But you can definitely continue to pay your service providers, and assuming everybody remains current, your bills would all be paid.
I think the biggest thing there is reach out to your customs broker and find out how they are planning on handling that. Some may have chosen not to, so it really will depend on the broker. GHY has said, we are committed to ensuring that we continue to support our clients the way we have today. We want to in the future.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. All right, we've got, I'm just going to kind of go in sequential order here. We've got one from Harvey. We know that SOAs show only per day total. Is there anywhere to find transaction, even HTS level import activity detail?
Yeah, and actually, it looks like somebody else may have actually answered that for them as well on the Q&A there. I did see it pop up talking about there is an area that says transactional history. And that is where you can pull up some reporting data on your transaction history. It is, again, going to be a little bit limited, but it does provide some information. In some cases, it may be better to still reach out to your broker to obtain better reporting, or there are some other reporting capabilities that are to come in the portal. One being the CAD, I can't remember the name of it, what they've called it, but it's the CAD reporting document basically. And in there, you would go online, you would request from CBSA to obtain this report, and they will then provide it to you through the portal. That is solely for CARM, Go Live, and Forward. Anything that you would want with that detail prior to, you would complete in the same aspect of before, which was called a firm report.
So I think just to make sure how I heard the question, Sarah, is that nobody is going to see the tariff classification or the other information until release 2 happens, and release 2 doesn't happen until October. That's how I heard the question. That's fair, right?
I think it was a little mix of it, yeah.
Thank you.
Hopefully we've answered that.
I think you did. Thank you. Okay, so we've got one from Alice. Should we wait on obtaining an RPP bond? Our bond broker is advising that we should wait until CARM launch.
So CBSA's advice had been to wait until CARM R2 launches, because presently you can't add that information direct into the business system of CARM. CBSA would have to do that for you. So that their advice has been, over the course of the last 4 to 5 years, wait till CARM R2, unless you have another business reason, like a large amount of duty outlay or whatever reason like that, to get a bond. What we've also seen, and I think it's important to recognize, is that the bond limit was originally slated to be a $25,000 minimum, and just last month it got dropped to a $5,000 minimum. We know of other associations like the Canadian Association of Importers and Exporters who are continuing to lobby to have GST not be included as part of the bond for resident importers. So it would seem prudent to wait until R2, which we believe to be October 2024, before getting a bond.
Perfect.
So
Thank you.
I agree with your broker.
Indeed. Thanks, Al. Denise, we've got one from her. As you mentioned that the new CAD does not show the duty rate. Does CBSA plan to change that so we can see the duty rates applied?
A great question. And anyone really involved in the testing has really pushed forward a lot of these types of situations that we note, the duty rate, the excise rate, these types of things. They have been enhancement tickets requested, but we do not know at this time if they will be updated prior to the go live. So there has been some discussion that they are looking at whether they do revise the CAD, but there's no official word whether they will, and if they will, whether it would be done before.
So we hope so, but we don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, we've got one from Crenshaw. I've heard that there may be some issues with the pre-authorized debit. Is that true? And should we wait until after October to set up PAD?
So one of the problems in the past with PAD or the pre-authorized has been that if you have any credits, you need to shut off the PAD so that you can use the credit, and then you need to turn it back on after so that you can continue to use it. That has been corrected in the new system for Go Live. So I don't know if that fix is really working at this point, but it will for the Go Live date. There is also a concern in regards to the payment during that blackout period. And that we're going to have to reassess in October, I think, once CBSA comes out with their new transition plan from the switchover, and see if they're going to have a similar situation where the PAD payment may not pull that specific month and may occur the following month.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, we've got one from Laura. If we obtained a bond in anticipation, are we required to start using it, or can our broker continue to use their bond?
Well, a broker could continue to use their bond for sure. In fact, in some cases, the bonds that importers have received aren't properly even set up with CBSA, so things you may anticipate that you've got a bond, but unless you know that it's properly connected with the government, there are cases where brokers' bonds are still being used even though an importer has a bond. So to answer the person's question, yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Al. One more from Linda. Can the broker still clear our shipments if they don't have our delegation?
Good question. So again, that comes back to Al's kind of conversation about, as an importer, he could still clear my shipments, but he couldn't account for it. So that's really what we're talking about here, is that CBSA has been very adamant to ensure that there is going to be flow through the border. So that means we could still declare your shipments and have them released. However, we will not be able to final account for them.
Under your business number. So we can create a liability for you and just leave it sitting on your account. That doesn't seem logical. Like if you're having somebody process a release for you or authorizing that, you should delegate them to effectively be able to account for you, or go into the portal yourself and do that accounting. It's a very labor intensive and problematic way to do the accounting. They basically have you at this stage, unless they enhance the program, re-entering every field that a broker would have completed. So it's not logical that an importer would go in and account on their behalf. So we recommend, and how they have set up the CARM system is an expectation that every importer will delegate a broker who is able to do a release.
Perfect. Thank you, Al. Okay, so a question from Elizabeth. When using the PAD form for payment, if the wrong amount is debited by CBSA, how will the refund happen? Credit in the account or mailed checks?
When CARM 2 goes live, there will be an added feature of where you can actually select how you would like to have your credits, and it will default to check. Now, that doesn't mean that immediately you get a credit, you're going to get reimbursed. That credit will still sit on your account, and it will get used to be applied to debt. So there is definitely still going to be a process of, you're going to have your amount that you owe, you'll have a credit applied, and then overnight, you're going to have clearing rules that apply that credit and take off any debt that you owe. If over time that credit is still sitting there because you don't have anything new and you've been keeping up with your payments, then CBSA would allocate it to you, provided that that's the selection that you maintain.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, we've got Denise asking another question here. Is CBSA still planning on a blackout period for this month, or is that postponed until October with the new go live date?
It's postponed until October. There's no blackout. Great question.
Yeah, just want to be extra clear on that. One from Martin. Is there any way for a small business to basically continue as previously? For example, GHY doing everything?
So the answer is yes, until R2. Once R2 happens, you still have to be on the portal. You have to have registered yourself. You have to have delegated us. And through that flow chart, you can make a decision as to, would you like to pay the government direct, or would you like us to pay the government on your behalf? In so many ways, how we've been working can still continue, but the government has created this, I'm going to call it a barrier to business. Like, you have to go on the portal to register and you have to delegate us. Like that, it's that one extra process that has to happen. And yeah, you'll need security too, but we'll have to talk about that come May of next year.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. Well, there's a lot of good questions that have come through so far. Keep them coming, because we have got still quite a bit of time if you need it. So let's go to Elizabeth again. If we use another broker but want GHY to have access to our CARM account, authorization done in the platform, do we need a GAA?
Great question.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
We would just
because a general agency agreement has to deal with the release and the accounting. If you're just wanting to have access and a capability to see your profile, that is not release and accounting. That's a reporting service. So the answer is no.
Right. Consensus is in. Thank you. Let's see here. I'm just looking through. We've got in the queue. We've got one from Rhonda. Can we expect CBSA to modify the CAD any further?
I think that was the same questions before, and
Yeah,
again, we do hope so, but no clarification.
We hope you can expect the unexpected.
Yeah, we will continue to put in that request. By all means, put in requests for such a change.
Yeah, more requests, the better, for sure. Do we know what the CBSA's plan is to continue working on implementation? They have now canceled all calls. So yeah, again, implementation is now October, right?
So we don't know. We're waiting right now. They say they're going to announce more information and communicate more things in the weeks ahead. They've stated that CARM will be launched somewhat internally. We don't understand what that means. We expected we would have heard more at a trade chain partner working group meeting today, but that didn't happen. So all we know for sure right now is that things are postponed to October, and there's no blackout. We embraced what they saw as recommendations after their testing. They've been very, very open. Like, they've recognized the deficiencies. They've worked through created workarounds. They're not hiding behind anything. So we'll see where things go from here.
Perfect. Thank you. We've got another one from Harvey. You mentioned that current design of CAD is no duty rate, also no duty or GST amount. That is a question.
So it does show the total amount of duties and taxes. It just doesn't show the rate. In other words, if, say, your classification holds a 5%, that's a weird one, 6% duty rate, it's not going to show that that duty rate, but it will show the total amount.
Well, it'll show the amount by the line too. I'm sure Harvey can't read this. I can hardly read it, but it'll show the amount by line. But for people that are using, as Sarah alluded to, a 3% or a 4%, like if you're wanting to see what the rate is, you're not going to get that unless you do the manual calculations at this time.
Or or either go through the tariff book to determine the rate, or reach out to your broker and find out what duty rate you're paying. So it's.
Does it show the portal, Sarah? Like R2, like if you look, it still doesn't show that either?
It doesn't show it in there either.
Wow, okay.
Okay, let's see. I think that is it for questions. We'll give it another minute here to see if the audience has any more burning questions on CARM that we haven't covered.
And we would, I guess the biggest ask is, first off, it's the first time we've done this under the team session, because we wanted to have it open and potentially even asked via verbal if that was something that was wanting to be done. But please let us know what your preferred means of communication is, because there's no one size that fits all. We've got 100 different people on the line here who have been on the line. We'd like to adapt our communication style to suit our customers' needs.
Absolutely, for sure. More of a conversational platform, which I think is what everybody's looking for. We've got a comment from Martin, which is a little funny. So why are they doing this again? Why are they? It seems like a boondoggle.
Okay, but but you know what? This is an outstanding question. The importer is the party that has a relationship with the government, and the importer is removed from the government. So they're trying to create a heightened accountability, and it is disappointing to know that most importers, and even now, most importers have not seen or don't know what's on their statement of account. So if you have a debt that continues to be growing, or if you have a refund that happens to be sitting there, I think most businesses or most people would like to know what that is. So what CARM is doing is it's enhancing that accountability and visibility, and we expect what will further happen in years to come is that maybe you'll be able to do just one offset, and that one offset may have to do with other aspects of how you're dealing with Canada Revenue Agency, not just Canada Border Services Agency. But that's a great question, because as you look at what the world we're living in right now, there are gaps.
And I think that's a great answer, is that we really have to stop and consider that Canada Border Services Agency is a business, and you are supposed to be able to be working with them and have that communication and that support back and forth. And I believe there's really been a lack of that. So, hopefully as they continue to build the portal, they will continue to add features that will help support you as an importer.
I'd like to also do one, I'll call it a sales plug, because that's what it is. Right now, the ability to look at the statement of account, if you're on the portal, you have to dial in to go and look. And I liken it to driving to a super mailbox. Like you have to go there in order to get your mail. What GHY is able to do, we're an authorized representative of Canada Border Service Agency. Anybody that would like their statement of account coming direct to them, even if you're not a customer, and coming direct to you via email, we can set you up with a service that you actually will receive that via email. You'll see what it looks like, and you can just save it or delete it, but you don't have to go to find it. So that is a solution and feature that we've had in place for a while.
Perfect. Thank you. Awesome questions. They keep coming through, so thank you to the audience. We've got one from Felicia. Does an account need to be created for each entity, or can a master account be created?
Great question. So the portal can only be per business number. In other words, each entity that has a separate business number will require to have a separate GC key, a separate account. They are not they are, for privacy reasons, really, they're not allowed to be linked together. If you have separate RM accounts, though, those will all be on one account. So you can have, say, 10 RMs, you would have one main account that you would log into, and that's where that delegation that Al talked about earlier can be really important, because that's where you may delegate different people to different RMs. You can have access to all of them, but then you can also divide who you would like to support each one of those RMs.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah. We've got one from Rhonda. Will the rates appear on the report that we can request?
The report that we can request, I assume you're referring to that CAD declaration report. That report will hold the exact same data that the firm report in today's day does contain. I do believe the duty rate is on there, therefore it should be on there as well.
Perfect. Thank you. One from Alice. Has CBSA addressed the issue with not allowing the use of the same email address for multiple companies?
No.
No, but there is a workaround. So the workaround is you skip that step. So that is the step where you're registering the business and it asks you to add your email address for a recovery, and you can only have that recovery to one account. You must skip it for all other accounts to be able to continue to this step. Hopefully that'll get fixed, though.
Cross our fingers.
It's a great question, because it's one of the larger pains in the what. So it has been heard and heard and heard and heard. I have to believe that will be fixed.
I would hope so, yeah.
We'll see. We'll see. One from Stacy. Is there a chance that CARM will be scrapped altogether and this is a giant waste of time and taxpayer money?
Okay, nobody would know for sure. I'm going to say the probability of that happening is low to no, and the reason for that is the current system is 37 years old. It's in awful shape. It's unstable.
Duct tape and Band-Aids, was that?
Bubble gum
Bubble gum
and duct tape. So CARM will be launched. They just need to work through a few things. Their current workarounds would have enabled things to have kept fluidity in the border. It's just there are still some challenges with that. But
overall, the main aspect of it is operating. The biggest constraints wrap around importers' readiness of registering, the issues with getting people on the account if they have previously registered. So there's definitely a lot of awareness now about some of those.
But in fairness, we don't have an answer to Stacy's questions, and many people have grounded their teeth in regards to that. So we don't think so, but we don't know.
Always possible, I guess.
Yeah, anything can happen for sure. So we've got one from Lori here. And we spoke a little bit about this and the internal launch within the CBSA, but what exactly is live for CBSA in May? If the implementation, the full implementation, has been delayed to October.
We don't know. It doesn't make sense to me that anything's live. We don't know. You got a better answer?
I mean, we are to continue sending as we do, so everything is being sent as a B3.
But what do they get?
Yeah, so my understanding is that it's not like they went and turned on the system for them, but again, yeah, it's speculation at this point as to what that really means.
Yep, indeed. Just a few comments. Martin has a good one here. So going from 200 importers to 200,000 importers, what can possibly go wrong? Yeah, it's for sure. It's quite the feat to achieve. So we've got a question from Mike here. Oh, sorry, Lori. Nope, we've already answered that one. She just popped it into the Q&A. Okay, well, I'm just looking through the queue. It looks like we've addressed pretty much all questions. Oh, we've got one more that just popped in. Okay, so does the transaction history in CARM have the ability to give us an Excel files summary for all the transactions with a filter function in place? If it does, what data points will the Excel files capture? CCN, transaction numbers, VFD, etc.
You're asking for me to remember it exactly. It's a little tough, but it is limited. It is limited information. It doesn't provide a breakdown of a lot of aspects. It has the transaction number. It has the value. It doesn't break down. I don't even think it breaks down duty and GST separate. I believe it just breaks down.
Well, there were filters that.
But there's a couple filters. Yeah. You can filter by date, and then you export it into a CSV file. So there is some functionality. It is limited in the amount of data it provides.
If you've got the email for that party, we can show a link as to what has previously been shared. We hope that it continues to grow, but we can show a link as to what previously has been shared, and we'll see from there.
For sure. Thank you.
It sounds like we're winding down, and want to be respectful of people's time.
Absolutely, indeed. We will wrap it up. We want to mark this as the conclusion of our Q&A session today. We want to thank everyone for attending, and thank you to Al and Sarah for providing their expertise and knowledge to help us better understand where CARM is at today, and really the path forward from here. So again, we're always here to support our clients and non-clients through this journey of CARM and the responsibilities as importers, ensuring compliance with Canada Customs. So please reach out to us at any point. We're always here to help. Appreciate all the positive comments coming through about this format and the platform. I think we will utilize this again for everyone. Again, take care. Thanks for attending, and stay safe. Goodbye.